It's been about a year since my last video, a bit more than a year, I think. The reason for that is I tried rewriting my operating system in Rust, and it went pretty well. I learned a lot. I really like Rust, but when I got to the end, I realized there were a bunch of, not a bunch, but a few bugs that I couldn't quite iron out. It's something I'm definitely interested in doing in the future, but for now, I figured I'd return to the C version of the operating system, and it's a lot easier to work with. So we're back to doing that now. So I made another video. I made a web client with a backend server that talks to the operating system through the serial port. So I'm going to show you that in QEMU mode first. So I'm going to go ahead and, so what we're doing with QEMU is, let's see, if we go to the make file here, I run QEMU TCP. It's going to run QEMU as it normally does, but it's going to pass in this serial TCP localhost 8081 option. This means instead of reading input and output from the terminal, it's going to do it at a certain TCP port. That's why we have the, we wrote a serial client program here in Tools. This is kind of like a Node.js server that's going to listen and respond to that port on TCP. So we do have to get that started before we run this. If we try to run this, it's going to say, oh, I don't know where that is. I can't find that service. So we're going to run yarn TCP mode. And this is in the tools serial client directory of the project. So now it's listening. Now if we run this, it starts up, and instead of dumping the output in this window, it now dumps it out in the standard output of the serial client. So now we have the backend, but if I type in here, it's not gonna listen. It's not listening on this standard input. So that's what the web client's for. So I wrote a React app because that's what I do. I'm most of my job is doing React apps and web development and stuff. And so I wrote this because it was easier for me to automate stuff through a web app. It was getting kind of cumbersome doing everything through the terminal interface. Like I could examine memory and stuff like that, but it's all, I have to type in everything manually. It's harder to do, macros and stuff like that in the terminal. It's possible, but my wheelhouse is kind of web apps, so, that's naturally what I'm going to see everything, solve every solution with web apps, kind of. So if I hit refresh here, here's the web app, and it gives me a bunch of garbage. So this is something I'm still trying to figure out why it does this on the first load. What it's doing is trying to load in memory, and it gets garbled somewhere. It sends a command that tries to load that in. So let's see if I can fix this. I'm going to restart this and that, and then I'm going to hit reset. Okay, that time it seemed to work. So as you can see here, we've got a memory viewer. This is our memory address. The operating system memory, the kernel starts at hex 8000. And then I've got these next buttons, which if you look at the addresses here on the left, it increments or decrements by hex 40. So you can see I'm scrolling through memory. And so what this is doing is this is just sending little requests. It's sending requests over TCP to QEMU, which receives it on the serial port, and then QEMU is sending stuff back through the serial port, and that's where we get all this. And then I can also, type in my hello command. You used to be able to hit 1 in the terminal like that, and it would say hello to you, so now I have that hello here. And then these buttons will clear the screen, draw the curve, and the logo. This is QEMU, and I don't have the display configured for that yet, but I can show you that next in the hardware demo. So let's do that now. So this serial client can actually talk to QEMU through TCP, or I can start it in, let me show you. We've got a couple of different. So yeah, if you do TCP mode, it's just going to run it. So by default, it'll run a TCP server, or it will actually talk through an actual serial device. And on my system, that's TTC ACM 0. I have a serial to USB converter plugged into the Raspberry Pi board, and so that just kind of converts that to USB. Before I do that, though, I need to type it. I need to connect to the Raspberry Pi through Picocom. I just have to run this command. The reason why I do this is this sets the baud rate on the serial line. If I don't do that, I'm going to get like a lot of garbage like you saw before. And I should probably program this into the client, but I haven't done that yet. So this is kind of a workaround to set the baud rate. So I'm going to exit out of that. The baud rate's now set. So now if I do serial mode, now we're listening to the actual hardware. So I'm going to turn on my camera on my phone and try to record this so you can see it. All right, so we're going over to the Raspberry Pi here again for review. This is the these are connected to the serial device in the chipset on the Raspberry Pi, and this is my little converter. See the wires going into the pins there, and then this is USB, and that just goes into the back of my computer, and this is HDMI going to that display, and this is the power. So we're going to turn on the power, and we're going to watch the display. It should come on. Yeah, it auto powers on. There we go. So the color's not great, but you can see it there. So if I go back to the web application, I can hit hello. You know, we see it's still, this time it's talking to the actual device, but now if I hit clear, that clears the screen. I can draw the curve, and I can draw the logo. And so the curve is drawn based on a value in a certain part of memory. So if you set that to a certain color, it'll draw the color, it'll draw the curve in that color. So I want to add a little color picker in here so I can set that. I could just go to it in memory. This is just read only. I want to add a bunch of more widgets and convenience components in here so that I can read memory, I can edit memory, write memory. I also want to be able to view memory in like different formats. So like this is hex, but then I could also view it in string format, or if I have certain structs or data objects, I could have components where you just plug in an address and it'll interpret all the data in there. I also compiled a list of registers, like the system control registers. And so I'm going to run this through a script that's going to parse all these out and put them into a big table in the backend server. And then I can have a drop down with the names of all of these control registers and whether they're read or write. And I can read the value out, write the value back in, and then have, you know, customizable components for each one that can interpret the values based on the bits that are set or aren't set, because right now I'm doing all that manually, and so I hope to automate all of that with a web app, because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at making web apps. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I also want to, I've been playing around with the Linux kernel, studying how it does memory management, and I really want to learn how to use the memory control unit, the MMU. That's what it's called. And I've got a lot of great ideas. I'm going to try some kind of new crazy ideas I have to try to do something that's similar to processes, but not quite. Because right now, the kernel just spins in a loop. It just listens for activity on the serial port. And if it doesn't get anything, it can do like some work. And then it checks again, does work. And then when it does get something on the serial port, you know, like a 1, like that, it'll do something and then return to the loop. But I want to start actually doing process and task management and stuff like that. So updates to follow. I'm pretty excited about it. It should be a lot of fun. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.